Tuangazie spoti. Cristiano Ronaldo alimpiku tena Lionel Messi kwa tuzo la mchezaji bora wa shirikisho la soka duniani FIFA. Kura hizi hupigwa na manahodha wa nchi mbalimbali, wakufunzi na wanahabari kadhaa wa michezo.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, guys, thank you a lot, the guys who are voting on me, to mention Leo and Neymar to be here. Real Madrid supporters, my teammates, my coach, my president, they'll support all the year, so I have to say thank you to them. And we are in England for the first time, and I win the consecutive award. So I'm really glad. This is a great moment for me. FIFA give opportunity to the fans. I know I have fans all over the world. So thank you a lot for the support. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I think I say everything. It's great. It's great to be here around these great players, this amazing player. And I'm so happy, guys. Thank you very much and have a good.
Kufikia hapo mtazamaji, sina la ziada. Asante sana kwa kutazama Kivumbi mwaka 2017 awamu ya saa moja. Tunazidi kutifua kivumbi. Endelea kuwa nasi. Mimi ni Mashirima Kapombe. Usiku mwema.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
beautiful Africa, home to some of the greenest and greatest wonders of the world. Deep in its core, drawing beauty from within. But is it slowly dying, or is our efforts to save it steadily paying off?
Agriculture and trade are key.
In Cameroon, water scarcity affects not only...
Join us on Eco at Africa as we take you through some of Africa's most epic scenes and delve into transformational stories of the young and old trying to keep this land alive.
Kipindi chako cha Dau la Elimu kinaendelea kukuletea taarifa na uchambuzi wa kina kutoka viwango vyote vya elimu.
Mvulana akiomba kitu nyumbani anaambiwa nitakupatia, lakini nitatoa katika pocket money yako.
Na mtazamaji, ni mambo ambayo tumejionea katika maabara hii ambapo tumeona mambo mengi tu kuhusu uvumbuzi.
Wanapoenda kule wakipata mimba, akishatoka kuzaa arudi shuleni.
Weledi wa maswala ibuka hukupa kila dondoo unayohitaji na maswali yako kupata majibu.
We have decided to close the school for 2 weeks.
Kila Jumamosi saa 11 jioni.
Watch KTN News round the clock on Signet Channel 32, DSTV Channel 274, GoTV Channel 94, Zuku Channel 14, and on Bamba TV Channel 2.
Whether you're playing or watching, there's something for everyone at Bet-in. Bet-in. Cheza nasi, bet nasi.
From backing up your CCTV recording today to recovering it tomorrow, let's get your business ready with Safaricom CCTV Backup for as little as 500 shillings per month.
This is KTN News.
Good evening. It's just a day to that repeat presidential poll. This is part of our ongoing coverage of Kivumbi 2017. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. This evening, the electioneering period is not only the longest, as we have seen over the past couple of days and months, but also the most litigated in Kenya's history. Other than the Supreme petition that saw the annulment of Uhuru Kenyatta's election on the 1st of September, there have been 10 other petitions filed to get clarity with regards to the fresh presidential poll. Others even seeking to stop the election altogether. The High Court today dismissed a petition filed by Pokot South Member of Parliament David Pkosing on the basis that it did not meet the threshold of a constitutional petition. In his ruling, Judge Chacha Mwita said no court can force a citizen to exercise his or her right to vote, stating that it would violate the person's fundamental rights. Now, the legislator moved to court arguing that NASA leaders are seeking to secure power through a crisis triggered by failure to hold a fresh presidential election within 60 days, as directed by the Supreme Court. According to the MP, if the fresh presidential election slated for October the 26th aborts by whatever means, then Kenya is likely to plunge into a constitutional crisis. Meanwhile, while all of this was taking place, the Supreme Court is now set to hear a petition filed by 3 Kenyans, namely Kelef Khalifa, Samuel Mohochi and Gasheke Gashihi, all challenging the October 26th election. And tomorrow on Wednesday is when the case will be heard, just hours to the repeat poll. So tonight we're asking, are we staring at a crisis? On the show tonight, we'll explore the perspectives by different lawyers. We have Abdi Kadir Mohammed, who is the advisor to President Uhuru Kenyatta on constitutional matters. He will be with our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna. We also have Ishmael Nyaribo, an advocate. And later, we will also speak to James Orengo, who is a NASA lawyer. Good evening and welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us. So, Sophia Wanuna, I will start off with you. Like we've said, a number of petitions. Perhaps you can bring us up to speed with the numbers of the petitions and what's taken place in court today, which one's been heard, which one's been dispensed with, which are still pending.
Good evening, Yvonne. Yes, a litigious nation we've become around this electioneering period. And today, as you rightfully put it earlier, we heard that matter by the Member of Parliament from Pokot South, that's Pkosing, who had sought for the High Court to compel Raila Odinga and his running mate to participate in this repeat election. And the High Court finding it first, it has no jurisdiction on its own motion. The judgment had to say that none of the parties had questioned or even submitted any arguments around whether the High Court actually had jurisdiction over this matter, but that the court on its own motion decided to venture into that because of the issues that had arisen and that we're still in that electoral cycle, and the judge feeling and believing in accordance with his interpretation of the law that this matter is one that squarely lies in the Supreme Court, and also citing that one cannot be compelled to run for office if they do not wish to do so. The other matter that was heard today, but a ruling will be made tomorrow, is the Mwau case. And this is one that Harun Mwau is asking or challenging the fact that this election is being conducted without there having been nominations conducted before that. And the argument is around, what does a fresh election mean? Doesn't it mean that you, in essence, go back to nominations? But remember, there was that High Court decision in Okuro Court that while the judge was reading his ruling, had talked about that the 60-day time limit, 90 days nomination timeline that is set out in law would perhaps not be feasible. But again, this matter, we wait to see how the judges will rule tomorrow. Another matter that was decided on today is one by Omtata, who is seeking for a caretaker government to be set in place owing to the situation Kenya finds itself in. That, again, a matter that the court found is not within its mandate. That's the High Court. So, again, jurisdictional issues arising on that. And there are several others. Today, 3 petitioners moving to the Supreme Court seeking to stop the 26th election. Is just a day away, and Yvonne, some of the intrigues we've seen unfold today is that tomorrow was declared a public holiday. In essence, courts should not operate on a public holiday, but there then was a certificate of urgency that was sought and granted by the Chief Justice, directing that all matters in all the other courts, even that one of Harun Mao, and this other petition that was filed in the Supreme Court, be heard tomorrow, despite it being a public holiday. So we will be seeing how these matters will unfold tomorrow, and a lot, Yvonne, as we've been seeing, litigation. And I'm holding with me a constitution, and with the man who gets to advise President Uhuru Kenyatta on constitutional matters, because I believe this is one of those times that the president is consulting with him a lot. Abdelkader Mohammed in his office here at the CBD. Thank you so much for making time for us. And let's begin with all of this litigation, because for some, they would be concerned with the environment we find ourselves in as a country. People move to court to seek justice. So in essence, we are going to an election where people feel justice is not being served.
Yeah. I think we have, as you said at the beginning, become a very litigious society, and thank you. People have a right to go to court. In fact, we have a process called the vexatious litigants process, where if you come back to court very many times, then the court stops you from having that right to access. But as of now, nobody has been stopped from accessing the courts. So people have a right to go and litigate. It just shows that our institutions are firing on all pistons. Is it the right thing? Is it a good thing to be litigating a few days to the elections on all these things? I don't think it's a good thing. Remember, we had the Maina Kiai case, which was finalized 35 days to the election, which caused quite a bit of the problems we had in the last elections. So policy-wise, I don't think is a very good thing, but people have a right to litigate. The courts have given them audience. We have to abide by the law. We, as the Chief just said, we are a country governed by the rule of law. The law allows for people to go to court. The law requires that we abide by court orders. The law requires that courts determine matters on the law. So let's get this done with. The point is that the country wants to go back to its normal pace of life, and we want to go through these elections and get back to our life.
And Jubilee has also moved to court, isn't it?
I suspect there are dozens of, about 2 dozen or so cases around the courts. I know there's one, for example, which Jubilee had filed on contempt proceedings, and they were not fortunate enough to be heard at a very fast pace. Fortunately, my friend Khalif Kalfana and the others have gotten the good year to be heard tomorrow after they filed just today or last night, whatever time, we're not very sure. But yes, so it's really up to the courts, their registries, to determine when the cases will be heard. As you stated, the Chief just said the courts will be open tomorrow. We have no problem. Let the cases be heard. Let the orders come down, and we'll buy. Bottom line, the courts need to know, and I'm sure they do, that everything should be determined on the basis of the law, and the country really wins the public interest in the country during the elections and moving forward.
Yeah. As a constitutional advisor to the president, what kind of conversations are you having at this time with him in light of all of this litigation? First, his election was annulled by the Supreme Court, takes us back to an election which is being challenged. You have a petition challenging this 26th election. The environment and atmosphere of the election as well is a concern across the board, many calling for dialogue. So what is it you advise?
So first, I think the advice to the president or any other person who's given advice really requires quite a bit of discretion. So I don't think what advice or where or when really would come into the public debate. The whole idea is but the president has access to quite a team of legal support. He was part of the team that put up the constitution, if you remember. He's a very experienced politician himself. But bottom line, the discussions around the issues are the discussions we're having. The country has gone through an election. That was as per the law. We had observers from every country you can think of. That was as per the law. We had one of the parties going to court. That was as per the law. We had the court coming to one of two decisions they could have come, which is either we agree for whatever reason or we disagree for whatever reason, and they agreed with the petitioner. That was as per the law. The requirement that we have elections in 60 days, that is as per the law. The requirement that IEBC is the one that's conducting the election, that is as per the law. The requirement that we hold an open, free, fair election where people have access to their polling stations, that is a requirement of the law. So this is the path we have set for ourselves. I think we should allow everybody to go through. If you have an interest in court, go to court. If you are interested in voting, you should have the freedom to vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I want us to continue with this conversation and talk about some of the developments we've seen even this evening. There's that notice that has come from the IEBC and a letter that has been signed by Wafula Chebukati, the chair, indicating that the deputy vice chair of the IEBC has been named the deputy returning officer. So is that sound in law? We'll talk about that and also look at the environment for an election. What does the law talk about that kind of a situation? Because there are those raising concerns. But I understand we have Senator as well, James Orengo, on standby. Yvonne, I'll hand it back to you for now.
We'll come back to you in a short while. Let me speak to the Senator, James Orengo. Senator, good evening, and thank you for joining us on the program tonight. I think first, before I get your reaction to the ruling that took place in court earlier today, I'd like to start with the latest development that my colleague has mentioned, and that is the appointment of the Deputy Vice Chair of the IEBC as the Deputy National Returning Officer. What's your reaction to this?
Well, there's a series of things which have happened today which looked at together is an indication how the electoral landscape is going to be in the next 2 days, and it is not a very good picture. But to come to the point that you're making, under the law, there is no position of a deputy returning officer for the purposes of presidential elections. Let me repeat, there is no position of a deputy national returning officer in presidential elections. Under the Constitution, the only position that is recognized is that of the chairperson of the commission as the returning officer in the presidential elections. And secondly, there are positions which are recognized as deputy returning officers in the constituencies. Under the Elections Act, the only positions that can be made and persons appointed to those positions are those of deputy returning officers in the constituencies. And therefore, this decision is a way of trying to get what Jubilee has not obtained through the legislation that went through Parliament, which the President has not assented to. And obviously, without any doubt, this appointment is illegal and is a pointer that, there is no confidence on the part of Jubilee with the returning officer, the national returning officer for presidential elections, which is in the person of Mr. Chebukati. And it's quite understandable why Jubilee would not be confident with that position. And I understand this position was made in plenary by the Commission, and Mr. Chebukati may not have been quite involved in doing that, making that decision. Now, there are 3 other or 4 things which have happened today which are of significance, but I'll wait for your next question.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to go into some of the other issues. But so you're talking about no such position in the law, and that this being done perhaps without Wafula Chebukati's knowledge or assent to. So why do you think this is? What do you make of it? To what end?
I think at the end of the day, they want to ensure that once these bogus elections take place, it should not be in doubt, like in the last time when there was prevarication, so they thought in the announcement of the winner in the elections which are held on the 8th. There was a lot of pressure, and Mrs. Akombe has alluded to this, for the winner to be announced. The commission was not quite ready, but they were forced to make that announcement. This time around, they want somebody who would be able to make that announcement if the chairperson of the commission is not ready to make that announcement.
All right.
And this is terrible, and I think it's a big disaster.
Okay, we have Abdikadir Mohammed. He will respond to that in just a moment. But you had also talked about other events that have happened today that bear some significance for you?
Yeah, there are 3 or 4 things which happened today. Making tomorrow a public holiday was in anticipation of the Supreme Court sitting tomorrow. Obviously, they had hoped that the Supreme Court would then not sit tomorrow. Secondly, there has been the arrest of several persons and detention of leaders, NASA leaders, Governor Kingi being one of them, Senator Mazayo, and the raiding of the home of Senator Halwale. Thirdly, the brutality shown by the police in the demonstrations that were held today, despite promises made by the international community, that is the local diplomats who are here, that the government would not use force or will not deny protesters a chance to carry out peaceful elections. And this all put together in totality shows that the government is decided to use, the big hand of government to impose its decisions and run the show, as it were, as opposed to the commission being left to run the affairs in ensuring we have a free and fair election.
All right, so today that case that was filed by the Pokot South Member of Parliament, Pkosing, was thrown out on the basis that it did not meet the threshold of a constitutional petition. But that's not the only one. There's, a number of cases since the Supreme Court verdict that have made their way to the courts regarding this repeat exercise. First of all, your reaction to the Pkosing verdict today, as well as all the other cases that are before, the courts, including the one by the Supreme Court that will be heard tomorrow now, despite it being a holiday. What are your thoughts on all of this? And indeed, what's the game plan for NASA going forward now?
I don't want to comment in each and every case because, these decisions, they raise a lot of legal issues and constitutional issues. I may not have the time. But never before have we had so many cases around and concerning elections right up to the last day. And this just shows the extent of unpreparedness. And, over the last 1 year, IBC has been losing a lot of those cases. So it shows and demonstrates that, we do not have an environment in which we can hold free and fair elections. The legal regime that is to be applied is in doubt. Courts are delivering judgments that are contradicting each other, or some which tend to go against superior courts. And therefore, the thing that should have happened was that, the issues that were raised by NASA should have been addressed, because I think those issues, if they had been addressed, then the legal atmosphere would have been clearer, and there would have been an atmosphere which would be conducive to hold a free and fair election.
My final question to you, Senator. Tomorrow, a lot of expectation around the presidential, or rather the NASA leader, Raila Odinga, tomorrow by 5 p.m. Any idea, or perhaps you can talk to us about what to expect from that statement he's set to make tomorrow on the way forward?
First of all, tomorrow we are going to have a big rally in Uhuru Park. It is at that rally that Raila Amolo Odinga, Prime Minister Raila Odinga, is going to make that announcement. And indeed, it's going to be an important announcement that will impact not only on the elections, the bogus elections that are supposed to be taking place on the 26th, but also be a pointer to what type of politics we're going to have, beyond the 26th. But I think the democracy and the fight for a new constitutional order is not over. And I think these are some of the issues that Prime Minister Odinga is going to deal with it tomorrow in that important announcement.
Just quickly respond to the allegations that NASA might be planning some violence to ensure that the environment in which to conduct elections would be rather difficult. I'm sure you've heard of this, these accusations and allegations. This might be a moment to comment on that.
Now, let me tell you, it is a state which has got a monopoly of weapons of terror. They have a monopoly of arms. We don't go to rallies carrying any guns. We don't go to rallies carrying any weapons. We don't wear military uniforms like Jubilee does. We don't have a militia. The Jubilee has a militia. And therefore, we are victims in this very violent environment. And, you know, we are overwhelmed by the fact that even the international community is not seeing the application of state terror on citizens of this country who only want to exercise their democratic right. We are not going to use violence tomorrow. We are not going to unleash violence on the 26th. But quite to the contrary, you'll see to the extent which the state is going to unleash violence. And the record is clear. They have already killed nearly 100 people, you know, through, you know, sheer violence, and most of all by using guns and weapons.
All right, thanks very much for speaking with us, Senator James Orengo, who's also an advocate of the High Court.
I'm indeed obliged, but tell your viewers to be tomorrow at the rally at Uhuru Park, and we are telling the government not to interfere with that rally at all.
Okay, I'm sure they have heard you loud and clear, Senator. Thank you for that. Sophia, I know you've been following the conversation with Abdikadir Mohammed. Over to you now. I'm sure there's a lot to react to. Senator Orengo saying there's no such position as Deputy National Returning Officer and that Jubilee has its own militia.
Indeed, let's hear from the constitutional advisor to the president. You've heard there Senator Orengo saying that there is no such position as a deputy returning officer. Talk to us about that. Also, as you know, Article 138, and this is 10. Says within 7 days after the presidential election, the chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission shall declare the results. So it's all about the chairperson. It's explicit about the chairperson and the role.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Sophia. You know, we live in a very strange time where really truth, plain language doesn't really seem to hold any water. I mean, this is not the first time a deputy returning officer for the presidential election is appointed. In fact, in the 8th August elections, the same lady had been gazetted as the deputy returning officer. Isaac Hassan, numerous times when he was holding either the referendum or the elections, the gazettement was done. I've just shown you a copy of the gazette notice itself, very clearly laying out the constitutional basis, the statutory basis, the regulation basis for that. And I can go through all those for the benefit of my good friend Senator Orengo. But bottom line, the Supreme Court has said hold the elections in 60 days. The Constitution says hold the election in 60 days. The electoral laws are very clear. You just stated something on the environment of the elections. It's very key. It's a constitutional provision that every citizen has a right to free exercise their vote. Now, that means you don't stop them by violence. We have had demonstrations organized by my friend Senator and others that clearly are meant to stop that. In fact, you have had very senior members of that team, including the former Honorable Prime Minister, saying there shall be no election. By what lawful authority? Other than by violence and destruction. And yet these same people come up and say, regulation this does not allow you to do this. The Constitution requires for you to let people exercise their freedom of choice. You want to stop that by violence. Yet you want to come and hide under regulations of the same. The vice chair is the vice chair of a commission. Every institution that is a commission has a chair, a vice chair, and a CEO. The CEO has been forcefully told to step aside because of agitation from NASA. Why? What lawful process did we go through to ask that good man to step aside?
All right.
Nothing. The vice chair is the vice chair. They are stopping her from acting as a vice chair of the commission. Why is a vice chairperson a vice chairperson? Other than to hold the functions of a vice chair. She is not The returning officer, she is the deputy returning officer because she's the vice chair of the commission. The regulations are there in the Gazette note I just showed you.
Yes.
All the sections, all the constitutional provisions, all the regulations. And I can read it for you one by one.
But we've never had a scenario where the deputy chair is announcing the results. So yes, those regulations are there.
Because the chair has always been there.
But so are we in this situation envisioning a situation where the chair is not there?
Why were we not asking that question on the 8th when we had the chair as the returning officer and the vice chair gazetted as the deputy returning officer? Every constituency has a returning officer and a deputy returning officer. What is this conspiracy theory that the reason why she has been gazetted as a deputy this time is, because Chebukati was Mr. Orengo in the meeting where the plenary decided to go ahead with this? Was he there? And has Mr. Chebukati come and said, I don't want to announce the elections and therefore this is what is being done? Why the conspiracy theory? This is an election we have done before. On the 8th, we had a returning officer and a deputy returning officer. The last time we had in 2013, we had a returning officer and a deputy returning officer. Every constituency has a returning officer and a deputy returning officer.
So in the event the chair is not there, then the deputy
That is why we have a vice.
Okay.
Why do you have a deputy president? Are we saying because you have a deputy president, the president is going to be... It doesn't... It
but
really...
according to our laws now, the deputy, the vice chairperson, I beg your pardon, is not a lawyer and so will not be able to act, some have argued, in that capacity of chair. Is that a challenge in this situation?
Again, the fantasy of NASA. These are the people who based the former Prime Minister's decision on an obiter dicta. They want to hang, when a man is drowning, they hang on anything. They want to hang.
But even the IEBC hang on that in saying that only the two would run. That's why the High Court then added a Kurue court saying the IEBC was wrong.
Now, the IEBC has a decision on their own, but this is NASA we're talking about right now. As far as NASA is concerned, the vice chair cannot act because the chair is existing. Of course, the chair is in. So long as the chair is in, there is no need for the vice chair to act. But every commission has a vice chair, it has a chair, and it has a CEO, and it has commissions. The commission is a corporate body. It is not one man. If today all the other commissioners left, and the CEO left, and the secretariat left, Mr. Chebukati cannot do anything. We don't have a commission.
Before we go to break, one more issue, a concern, because many calls coming in, dialogue to take place, because there's a lot of anxiety, the atmosphere, the landscape is worrying for many. The environment in which an election should take place, and that can be upheld in a court of law as an election. Article 81, that is E and subsection 2. Free from violence, intimidation, improper influence, or corruption.
Absolutely.
We've seen incidences of violence. There are those who say police have been intimidating supporters. What do you say to this? Are we setting ourselves up?
So let me ask you, how come police in Mandera County, in Marsabit County, in all the 70, 80, 90% of the rest of the country are not intimidating people? If you have a riotous situation in Kisumu, or a riotous situation in Mombasa, or a riotous situation in Nairobi, of course the police have to act. That is their duty. They must react to that. Now, if you decide I'm going to riot, I'm going to carry stones, I will stone police stations, I will forcibly stop the electoral management body from conducting their training, I will actually tear down their offices. Yet if any police officer comes to tell me, please uphold the law, that is a violation of the law. Really, we cannot live in such a country. And time has come for people in the media, for the rest of the country to tell NASA straight up, look, you have a right to run in the election and you have a right to stay out. You have decided, if we are to believe you, you are going to stay out. Let the rest of us go on and vote and move on with our lives. If you have any issues, they are lawful process. Just like you went to court and ask the court to suspend or stop, you have the same processes. Go to court once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Unfortunately, elections must be won and lost. The Honorable Orengo went through the same process, through the same IEBC, was declared a winner. Supposing his opponent came and said, we are not going to go through elections, we have to decide and have dialogue. So what is the use of going for elections? Why not just stop everything? Don't waste the 100 billion we spent on this and go for dialogue on decisions. And what country are we going to have if every time somebody throws a tantrum, we're going to have dialogue?
All right. Abdikadir Mohammed, the President's constitutional advisor, is going to continue to stay with us here on Kivumbi 2017. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back. Please stay with us.